There is a report that the Ticats have been shopping Zach Collaros.
Not true.
Not true at all.
No. Listen, I mean, when teams approach us about our players, I think everybody can understand that when you're in the situation we're in, we've certainly been on the other end of this equation before in our past as well. It's not unusual for teams to come after your best players to see if there's any interest in moving on. And Zach's an outstanding quarterback, and we certainly understand the interest.
So is there any chance that you'll trade him during this season?
I'm not going to say never to anything. I would say that's highly unlikely. But you know, we're going to evaluate every single position, every move, everything we can to get our team better, whatever that looks like. But he's an outstanding quarterback, and we're not anxious to move somebody of that level of talent.
He's under contract for next season. That number's been reported to be a fairly significant number. Have you thought ahead to that about what that looks like and whether you'd like to see him back next year?
We look at everything. We look at the short term right now. We look at intermediate and long term as well. And we have to look at try to project what our roster is going to look like, where we have some holes, whether it's at the starting positions across the team, and also layering in depth, making sure that we have quality backups, because you're going to have injuries in this league. So all of those things are considered as you're planning, but you know as well as I do, Drew. I mean, some of those things get, best laid plans sometimes get blown up pretty quick because of injuries and other needs, and lots of factors are involved. So, but it's a moving target always, and trying to project anyway the composition of a roster in the future.
How much did you rely on, or how much did June Jones rely on you in terms of the decision to switch and to move on to Zach?
That was June's decision. Yeah. I'm no longer the coach.
Yeah, but he didn't ask input or anything, or was
I wouldn't talk about it. It's unfair to June. Even if he did, I wouldn't talk about it. It's I have a different role now.
It's interesting, though, because you've talked before about the fact that as coach you have one role and one hat, and as general manager you have another, and that you've at times had to balance those two things. In this case, it's possible to see a separation between what's good in the short term, which might be starting Jeremiah, and what's good in the long term, which might be starting Zach, to find out whether or not he's worth keeping at the number he's on the books for next year. And suddenly those things aren't necessarily the same. How do you balance that?
I would still keep all that in mind. Even when I was the coach. I mean, I think we as a group of both coaches and our personnel guys struck a pretty good balance. Certainly tried to do right by the football team in every aspect, both short term and long term.
But June doesn't necessarily have that long term mentality, right? As a coach,
no, as he shouldn't.
Right.
He's in there to win, and nobody knows that more than June does. And I'm certainly sensitive, having been I've been a coach for a very long time, on the demands of that and what that looks like, and to be as supportive as I can to help create a more competitive and winning football team for him.
When John Chick was traded, a lot of people thought this would be the beginning of the great Ticats sell-off of 2017. It doesn't seem to be the case. Just how active, have you been more active now that you're not on the sidelines in terms of taking calls or listening to offers or talking to other people?
Well, I think that the calls have gone up simply because of what I said earlier in this press conference. And when you look at a team that hasn't won a football game, teams are going to start reaching out to see if you'll move some of your more valuable assets. We're not idiots here, so we're going to make sure that we keep the pieces that we need to be competitive, both short term and long term, as we decide, right? To build our team and to build our team even stronger going forward.
Is Zach still part of this team's long term plans?
Well, Zach's on our football team, is he not?
Right. Well, that's now, but I'm talking about long term plans.
Everybody that's on our football team right now is in our long term plans. Doesn't mean that won't change.
Okay.
But that's the case no matter what. That's the case for every starter. That's the case for every other position. We're going to look at building a team that gets us back to a competitive level, that wins football games and gets us back in the Grey Cup. And So everything is on the table. I would say that that's, you know, that moving Zach is highly unlikely.
Okay. There was a story in the Cornell paper yesterday that says that the university has sued you over what it believes.
That's resolved.
It's been resolved.
That's not an issue. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us how it was resolved?
No.
Okay.
Listen, that was something that has been in process for a long time, and it's been, but it's completely resolved. That story. You got to be careful what you read.
Okay.
You've known Zach a long time. You've been his coach for quite a bit of time. What does it say about him kind of accepting this role as a backup?
Well, listen, Zach's a wonderful person and cares about his teammates. His teammates know that. It's authentic. He's going to be a pro. And, you know, not every, that's not true. Not Doug and a handful of others, but most quarterbacks, I certainly was in this category, in this group, most quarterbacks have ups and downs during their careers. That's not unusual, right? And Zach's an outstanding player, an outstanding quarterback, and he'll get through this and be a great teammate, and that doesn't mean he won't be back on the football field for us.
Do you think, being in the CFL, you look at guys like Henry Burris and Ricky Ray, you know, they can play into their late 30s. Do you think Zach can kind of use that as motivation, as this is just a low point in
yeah,
their
career? Yeah, you'd have to talk to Zach about what his individual motivation is for playing, and I know he loves the game. You know, having coached the guy for a few years, loves being a football player, loves the game. So that's the biggest piece of the puzzle for longevity.